Alright, welcome to the Pulse Gun video Addendum. Today's topic is Celtic Spear's 111 Mahaon tune. So a bit of background here. On March 25th of 2025, Celt posted the following. 111 Mahaon. I am not elaborating. Now, intrigued, I went to the shop and I purchased one, and then I posted the stats for comparison in ACD. I noted that it has Napa level penetration and less overall damage, but it's easier on your generator, sure. The accuracy is also a nice bonus. The most striking stat you'll see is the high muzzle velocity. That's coming in at 726, which is more muzzle velocity than full accuracy tuned Lotus. Celt promptly explained that he was like Prometheus, handing down the flames of creation to humanity. This also spawned a magnificent meme. So with that context established, let's evaluate this tune to see if it's any good. There are plenty of weapons in Armored Core Verdict Day that are perfectly fine, totally passable armaments, but when you see how they stack up against the more effective or most efficient options available, there's just no contest. So my question is, does the 111 Mahaon suffer this fate as well? At the start then, this is the dilemma that I have with Celt's 111 Mahaon tech. At least at the first impression, it is so similar to the other pulse guns, but its damage is fucking abysmal. The trouble with gauging how good a weapon is in this game is that you need to check it against the different targets that it can hit, and for the other weapons that are similar to it that hit those targets as well. Commonly, people use pulse guns to tag light bipeds, light reverse joints, as well as quads. They usually need armor break support to hit mids, with the exception of the full power Mahaon, which can usually hit over their defenses. They can also hit heavyweight reverse joints too, but those are so uncommon in multiplayer that I'm just not going to mention it. So for starters then, it's a pulse gun, right? So we're comparing it with other pulse guns. What does this gun do differently compared to the other pulse guns? Does it hit any different targets? Does it hit them any better? So the full power Mahaon is considered the default tune for the weapon. Let's just get that out of the way. And that's the case with most other pulses and with basically every weapon in the game except for a couple. Now this version, the 111 tune, has less damage for sure, but it still has enough damage output for many low TE targets. It'll hit them just fine. The biggest draw that I can see, or at least consider, for the full power Mahaon anyways, is that it hits over the basic strike mid, and indeed basically any midweight biped that isn't packing TE arms or TE head in addition to a TE core for effective damage. The downside of the power Mahaon though is that it fires only 4 projectiles at once. So ironically, despite having the highest damage in the category, it does the lowest damage of the big 3 pulse guns because the Neodori Model 1 and the Napa both fire 6 shots, while the Mahaon only fires 4. Now certainly you'll hit for effective damage against more targets for sure, but the damage is lower per shot. As for the 111 tune Mahaon, it has 1156 attack power, which is actually on par with a Napa. So anything that is weak to a Napa is also weak to this, but with less attack power and only 4 projectiles, the damage is even lower. However, that isn't the only step that's changed, right? Compared to the power Mahaon, the 111 tune drains about 25% less energy per shot. You're dealing about 15% less damage in total on the 111 tune compared to the power tune anyways, but you were already doing 20% less than a Napa. So now it's like you're almost a third weaker than the Napa in terms of damage per shot, and you're a little more than a quarter weaker than the Neodori Model 1. You do, however, have much better muzzle velocity. It's about 15% more than the power Mahaon and nearly 30% more than the Napa or Neodori Model 1. And this is important, right? Because it guides us towards this weapon's niche. In terms of handling, it's actually a lot closer to the Neodori Model 1, or the Fremont, as it used to be called in ACV. So the Neodori Model 1 has less damage per projectile, sure, but the 2 extra projectiles mean it does do a lot more damage when both weapons hit their targets for effective damage. Their accuracy and their firing drain, however, are very comparable. The accuracy is actually identical. As for firing drain, it's so similar it's only like 3% difference. And the ranges are even pretty comparable. Let's take a step back from the numbers for a sec. My concern's on low firepower, first and foremost. You usually take Mahaon for extra coverage over the Napa. It just does more damage, it hits more targets. But to use the 111 Mahaon, you probably want to run it in shot pull style because we're getting our damage back down to Napa levels. The problem is just how much less the damage output is in total, right? I don't care if I'm penetrating the same targets, I just have, I'm missing out those 2 extra pellets, right? And sure, right, you only have 30 shots with this weapon, and it's certainly enough to kill anything with low TE. It's about like 100,000 damage that you can do total. you won't really feel the lack in total firepower, sure, but the per shot damage is so much less, I don't know, will you really notice it? You'll probably notice that you're not going to trade anywhere near as well as the other pulse guns. I mean, let's think about this a little bit further. I've prepared some more math for you to review about the burst damage. So, the lower damage should not really surprise you, right? But this is just so you can gauge it against competitor parts. Mahaon already had lower damage output than either of the other main pulse guns anyways. And that was never its strong suit, sure, but like, what you may be able to appreciate here is that against a Strek mid, the shot pulse damage is quite similar to the Neodori Mono 1. However, it's still a full 1000 damage less than the Nappa, which is like the main competitor here, right? It's still probably trading fine with Streks though, but I wouldn't mess with that 3BR at those ranges. So then what are you getting with this tune? While you're stuck paying the full weight and drain price for a Mahaon, your shots are more efficient, more accurate, they travel much faster than a Nappa or a Neodori Mono 1. The damage is less, right, but it's not too terrible a difference to make it unusable, or is it? I've included some more math for review, this time looking at the DPS against specific defense thresholds. In a defense vacuum, the Neodori Mono 1 and the Nappa are supreme. You will, however, notice that as defense increases, you will have other weapons that are much more useful for hitting the enemy if you're targeting a mid. If you have access to a 3BR or a Strakoza, it's damn near going to be more worthwhile just using those against the enemy, even if you have a Mahaon, because even against the basic Strek mid, effective Mahaon is not actually hitting much harder than a Strakoza, and similarly, a 3BR will chew right through the opponent in a sustained engagement. But there's a time and a place for going for DPS races. Celt said something once that I think is illustrative not only regarding his personal playstyle and AC design theory, but it also illuminates the unique aspect of the 111 Mahaon and why I think he recommended it to us. Celt said, "It's about opportunities to do damage, not DPS. This is not a weapon that you're going to use for head-to-head DPS fights, or for trading big bursts of damage. This is a weapon that's meant to edge out a victory by inches. It is clinical, it is consistent. When other pulse guns can't make the shot, the 111 Mahaon will. With its much better muzzle, with its lower firing drain, allowing you to get just one more extra shot out of your generator when the chips are down and you're both maneuvering and glide, giving it your all." I told you earlier, this thing has more muzzle velocity than the full accuracy termed Lotus. That weapon is notoriously difficult to avoid. Now imagine avoiding a pulse gun that hits you that fast. It hits similar targets to the Nappa, and it hits them a lot easier. It also has the handling characteristics which are on par with the already easy-to-use Neodori Mono 1. In those high-intensity, high-speed twitchy fights where you can't really pin down the opponent, maybe you really should rely on the 111 Mahaon to pull through for you. Or, if you're like me, you're just going to take your chances with the Neodori Mono 1 or the Nappa, or the Knuckle. But again, sometimes it isn't about making a statement, it's about winning subtly. It's about pressing your small advantages and not contesting firepower. The Nappa and the Power Mahaon might have their place in a brawl, but in one of those really scrappy fights where every shot counts and the enemy is elusive, you might start to care less about what your total firepower stat is on paper, and start really appreciating the fact that the shots you take actually hit. All that firepower doesn't mean shit if you can't connect the opponent. Let me know what you think.